The golden light of sunset filtered through the penthouse windows as I arranged the crystal flutes on the marble bar. Michael's booming laughter echoed from the living room where he entertained his colleagues, the same colleagues who had no idea who really owned this penthouse. "Another round, Elise," Michael called out, not bothering to look in my direction. "The boys are thirsty." I carried the tray of drinks with practiced grace, my Louboutins clicking softly against the hardwood floors he believed he had selected. The truth was in the details. The Brazilian cherry, not the mahogany he had initially wanted. Like everything else in our life together, what Michael believed was his choice was merely an illusion I had carefully crafted. "Gentlemen," I said, placing drinks before each of Michael's associates. "The Macallan 25, as requested." "Ah, there she is," said Richard, Michael's mentor and the current managing director at Westfield Partners, the investment firm where my husband believed he was on the fast track to partnership. "The supportive wife. Michael tells us you do something with art. Curator at that small gallery downtown?" "Something like that," I smiled, knowing how Richard's eyes never quite met mine. In the 3 years I'd been attending these gatherings, he had never once asked me directly about my work. "She keeps herself busy," Michael interjected before I could elaborate, "though I keep telling her she doesn't need to work at all. My bonus this year should be more than enough for both of us." The men laughed appreciatively while I maintained my pleasant expression, thinking of the documents waiting in my private office, the one Michael thought was my crafting room. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was indeed crafting something, just not the scrapbooks and photo albums he'd assumed filled my days. "How's the Jefferson acquisition coming along?" I asked casually, knowing exactly how it was progressing. Michael's smile tightened imperceptibly. "Business talk, Elise. I thought we agreed that's not your area." He turned to his colleagues. "She gets these ideas from those business magazines she flips through at the salon." More laughter, more knowing glances exchanged between men who believed they were the smartest people in the room. Of course, I conceded with a practiced smile. "I'll leave you gentlemen to it. Dinner will be served at 8. As I retreated to the kitchen, I heard Richard's voice. "You've got yourself the perfect package there, Michael. Beautiful, gracious, and knows her place." I checked my watch, a vintage Patek Philippe that Michael assumed was a well-made replica. It was 7:15 p.m., which meant Amara would be sending me the final confirmation any minute now. My phone vibrated in my pocket, right on schedule. "Everything is set for tomorrow. Board members confirmed. 9 a.m. sharp." I replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji, then returned my attention to the dinner preparations. The Chilean sea bass had been Michael's choice, naturally. He prided himself on his sophisticated palate, another fiction I had carefully nurtured over the years. The man had been eating frozen dinners when I met him. The dinner party proceeded exactly as dozens before it had, Michael dominating the conversation, taking credit for investment insights that weren't his, boasting about possessions purchased with what he believed was his money. "The vacation home in Aspen is finally being renovated," he announced over dessert. "Elise wanted to use some local designer, but I insisted on bringing in someone from New York. You can't trust these mountain town contractors with a property of that caliber." I had never suggested a local designer. The renovation was being handled by an award-winning Colorado architect whose waiting list stretched 2 years, unless you happen to sit on the board of the foundation that had funded his breakthrough project a decade ago. But Michael needed to believe these decisions were his, that his business acumen extended to every aspect of our lives. "More coffee, Richard?" I offered, already knowing he would accept. In the 3 years I'd been serving him coffee in my home, he had never once thanked me. Yes, he replied distractedly, his attention fixed on Michael's description of a non-existent investment opportunity in Singapore. I poured the coffee, my mind already focused on tomorrow morning. The Jefferson acquisition that Michael had mentioned so dismissively was, in fact, the cornerstone of what would transpire at Westfield Partners at precisely 9 a.m. The acquisition that the board had entrusted to Michael 6 months ago. The one he had been steadily mismanaging while taking extended lunches with his assistant and claiming exorbitant expenses. The acquisition that I had been quietly salvaging for the past 3 months. After the guests departed and Michael retreated to his study to make what he called an important international call, which I knew was actually to his mistress in the financial district apartment he thought I knew nothing about, I slipped into my private office. The room looked innocuous enough. A large desk with a laptop, several bookshelves filled with art history volumes and business books Michael never bothered to examine, and a comfortable reading chair. What Michael didn't know was that behind the large abstract painting on the far wall, a genuine Rothko that he believed was just a print, was a safe containing documents that would redefine both our futures. I opened my laptop and reviewed the presentation one final time. All the evidence was meticulously organized. The unauthorized expenses, the fabricated client meetings, the deliberate undermining of the Jefferson deal to benefit a competing firm where Michael's brother worked. And of course, the extensive documentation of how I had intervened, working through back channels to save the acquisition that represented nearly 30% of Westfield's projected annual growth. What Michael and his colleagues never bothered to discover was that Elise Chen, the supportive wife who did something with art, was actually Dr. Elise Chen, who held a PhD in economics from Stanford, had written 3 books on investment strategy under a pseudonym, and sat on the boards of 4 major financial institutions, including Westfield's parent company. Michael had met me when I was conducting research for my latest book, temporarily working as a gallery curator as part of my investigation into art market investment patterns. He had assumed that was my career, and I had never corrected him. It had been an experiment at first, seeing how long a supposedly brilliant investment banker would fail to perform even basic due diligence on the woman he was marrying. The experiment had evolved into a case study when I discovered his financial mismanagement and ethical breaches 6 months into our marriage. Rather than confronting him immediately, I had chosen to document everything, to understand the full scope of his deception while maintaining my home. My phone vibrated again. A message from Amara. Richard has reviewed the final documentation. He's shocked and disappointed. His words. I smiled slightly. Richard, the mentor who had never bothered to learn what I actually did, was about to discover just how thoroughly he had underestimated me. My phone buzzed once more. Security protocol in place for tomorrow. Legal team standing by. I responded, perfect. See you at 8:30. I closed my laptop and prepared for bed, listening to Michael's muffled voice from his study. He was still talking to his mistress, making promises about their future together using money he believed he controlled. Tomorrow would bring revelations on multiple fronts. The alarm woke me at 5 a.m. Michael remained asleep, having come to bed well after midnight. I dressed carefully in a Channel suit he had gifted me last Christmas, selected from my own accounts but wrapped with a card in his handwriting. By 5:45 a.m., I was in my car, a sensible Audi that Michael had insisted was appropriate for a gallery curator's wife, not knowing about the Maserati I kept at my private office across town. I drove directly to Westfield Partners, arriving before most of the administrative staff. My access card, granted to me as a board member of the parent company but unknown to Michael, let me into the executive suite where Amara waited. Good morning, Dr. Chen, she greeted me formally. The boardroom is prepared and all members will arrive by 8:30. Mr. Coleman has been asked to come in early for what he believes is a pre-meeting about his partnership track. Thank you, Amara, I replied, setting my briefcase on the conference table. And the documentation, distributed to all board members yesterday evening as requested, the evidence is compelling. I nodded, taking a moment to look out over the city skyline. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers of the financial district, including the building where Michael's mistress lived in the apartment he had leased under a shell company. A company registered to an address that happened to be a property owned by one of my investment groups. At 7:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Heading into an early meeting about partnership. Don't wait up tonight, we'll be celebrating. I didn't respond. He would find out soon enough where I was. By 8:45 a.m., the boardroom had filled with Westfield's executive team and several members of the parent company's board. They spoke in hushed tones, reviewing the documents I had provided. Michael was scheduled to arrive at 9 a.m. sharp, believing he was about to be offered the partnership position he had been pursuing for years. At 8:55 a.m., Richard approached me, his expression a mixture of contrition and professional assessment. Dr. Chen, he began, using my proper title for the first time. I must admit, that is to say, Michael never indicated that I was more than his supportive wife. I finished for him. No, I don't imagine he did. The evidence you've compiled is irrefutable, Richard continued, regaining his composure. The board is prepared to take immediate action. Thank you, Richard, I replied evenly, and the Jefferson acquisition. The steps you took to salvage it were remarkable. Unorthodox, but remarkably effective. The board is unanimously impressed with your intervention. I nodded acknowledgement just as the boardroom door opened. Michael entered with the confident stride of a man who believed he was about to achieve everything he had ever wanted. He froze when he saw me sitting at the head of the conference table. Elise? Confusion flickered across his face. What are you doing here? Hello, Michael, I greeted him calmly. Please take a seat. We have much to discuss. His eyes darted around the room, noting the sullen expressions of the board members, the folders open before each of them containing evidence of his misconduct. What is this? He demanded, a note of panic entering his voice. Richard, what's going on? Richard cleared his throat uncomfortably. Michael, I believe you know Dr. Elise Chen, though perhaps not as well as you thought. Dr. Chen sits on the board of our parent company and has brought some concerning matters to our attention. Michael's face paled as he turned back to me. Doctor? Board member? What is this, some kind of joke? No joke, Michael. I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. Please sit down. I've prepared a comprehensive overview of your activities regarding the Jefferson acquisition, your expense accounts, and your relationship with competing firms. The board would like your response. My relationship with... He stopped abruptly, the full implications beginning to dawn on him. You can't possibly know about your arrangement with your brother at Meridian Capital, about your deliberate undermining of the Jefferson deal, about the apartment on Fifth Avenue where you meet Jessica 3 times a week. I opened the folder before me. I know everything, Michael. I've known from the beginning. Michael sank into the chair, his confident facade crumbling. How? You never asked what I actually did before we met. I explained calmly. You assumed I was just a gallery curator with no head for business. You never questioned how I could afford the lifestyle we maintain on what you believed was your salary alone. But the house, the cars, the vacations, all mine, Michael. The penthouse was purchased through my investment group 3 years before we met. The vacation home in Aspen belongs to my family trust. Even your Rolex was selected and purchased by me, though you've spent years telling everyone about the incredible deal you negotiated. The boardroom remained silent as Michael struggled to comprehend the extent of his misapprehension. Michael Coleman, Richard spoke formally now, based on the evidence presented by Dr. Chen and corroborated by our internal investigation. Your employment with Westfield Partners is terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear out your personal belongings. As if on cue, 2 security officers entered the boardroom. This is ridiculous, Michael protested weakly. You can't just, Elise, tell them this is a mistake. No mistake, Michael, I replied, sliding a document across the table. These are divorce papers. Given the documented evidence of your financial misconduct and infidelity, my attorneys anticipate a straightforward process. Michael stared at the papers, then at me, genuine bewilderment in his eyes. Why? Why go through all this? Why marry me if you knew who I was? I didn't know at first, I admitted. But 6 months in, when I discovered your first indiscretion, I had a choice. Confront you immediately or understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. I chose the latter. Consider it professional curiosity. Professional curiosity, he repeated hollowly. 3 years of marriage is some kind of research project. Not entirely, I closed my folder. It was also a lesson in due diligence. You never once researched who I really was. Never questioned where the money came from. Never wondered why a simple gallery curator could afford the life we led. As security prepared to escort him out, I added, one more thing, Michael. The dinner party last night? All those colleagues you were so eager to impress. They've all received detailed reports this morning about your activities. Transparency is so important in our industry, don't you think? The aftermath unfolded with the precision of a well-planned investment strategy. Michael's termination made minimal waves in the financial press, overshadowed by the announcement of Westfield's successful completion of the Jefferson acquisition, a deal now attributed to the strategic intervention of parent company board member Dr. Elise Chen. The divorce proceedings concluded swiftly, with Michael receiving exactly what he had brought into the marriage: his clothes, personal effects, and the realization that he had spent 3 years living in a reality carefully constructed to reveal his true character. 6 months later, I hosted a small gathering in my penthouse, the same space where Michael had once held court with his colleagues. The guest list was different now: women from various industries, many of whom had experienced similar underestimation throughout their careers. The key, I told them as we enjoyed the view of the city lights, isn't proving people wrong immediately. Sometimes the most powerful position is being underestimated, watching, learning, and choosing precisely when to reveal your true capability. My phone buzzed with a message from Amara. Meridian Capital Board just approved the merger. You're now effectively Michael's boss's boss's boss. I smiled slightly and set my phone aside. To being underestimated, I raised my glass in a toast, and to revealing the truth at exactly the right moment. The women around me lifted their glasses, each understanding in her own way the power that comes from being the quiet one in the room, the one no one thinks to watch until it's too late.